Well, come out to Solby, just near the reservoir actually. With me is Dave, and behind us is one of the Keeills of the Isle of Man, of course, which is an old church chapel in its day.
Yeah, we have the island. The Keeills are the traditional chapels, small community chapels on the island. There were maybe 300 at one point. There's now probably less than 3 dozen that are actually standing above the ground.
Okay, well, you've got some interesting kit in your hand, and you've been walking around it. What's all that about?
Okay.
What are you doing here?
The Keeills Research Project is a way we want to find out more about what's around the Keeills. Back in the early 1900s, the Manx Archaeological Survey did go around researching the Keeills, but that was mainly excavation and only the standing remains inside and just around the edges. We learnt a lot, but they didn't go any further out. But most of these Keeills actually were planted in an inhabited landscape, and some of them it's quite an old landscape. When this one, we're at Corrady above Tholty Will, and when this one was excavated by PMC Kermode, in the middle of the floor of the Keeill they actually found a Bronze Age burial urn. So that this is actually on top of a Bronze Age burial mound. They sited the Keeills in important or significant locations, sometimes just because it was a cracking place, and you could site it here at Corrady for that reason alone, but in other times it was in a venerated place. And on the island the burial mounds have been reused, places that were sacred or venerated or holy. They would come back and place their ancestors in to bury them in the same place as their great ancestors, sometimes centuries, maybe even millennia later. So sometimes the Keeills, it's just another layer on top. So the Keeills are actually, this one is on top of or set into a Bronze Age burial mound.
Well, this whole site's like the TV show Time Team, isn't it?
Exactly.
Today you've got
Exactly.
geophysics going as well.
Absolutely. When they did the Manx Archaeological Survey, it was invasive. They were digging, and you can only dig a site once. Now, with the modern scientific advances, we can actually do it non-invasively. So our project, the Keeills Research Project, is an attempt to find out more about what's around the landscape that was there. Keeills, if they had windows, they didn't have curtains, but effectively what we're doing is pulling back the curtains, having a look out at the landscape, because they were built by communities. They were inhabited, some of them maybe millennia before. Sometimes there was things at the same time. They had enclosures, some had little houses or a cell for the priest, but not all of them probably had a priest. There were hundreds of these, maybe a couple of hundred at the same time, maybe, we don't know. But there probably weren't a couple of hundred priests, so maybe like modern pluralities where a priest serves a very long. Some of them were in places like Lagnakillia where the priest would go and it may be more of a retreat. You know, go for solitude, but the majority were to serve a community.
And this had a community around here, because it does seem fairly remote by today's standards anyway.
Yeah, well, the weather was better, there was agriculture, we don't know, no. But we may know, we just have a little bit more. So what we're doing, we're looking effectively beneath the ground. We're not breaking the ground. Yeah. Geophysics allows us to look beneath the ground. We've got a whole raft of techniques. The geophysics, you see them on Time Team. So we've got geophysics, we've got magnetic and resistance, and that allows us to look for shadows beneath the ground. We can use the LiDAR, which is where we've mapped the ground from the air, and the government have given us access to their LiDAR data. The museum have given us access to historical air photographs, and sometimes see crop marks. So we're trying to put all of that together. So that's fusing all those.
Have you found anything interesting so far? And how much more of these have you got to go?
Well, there are hundreds of Keeills sites to go to, and it is an ongoing project. Yeah. We started in a small way. Now we're trying to get things going. We've got a group of volunteers who are very keen to participate. This week, we've got the pleasure of a group from the Bath and Camerton Archaeological Society who carry out geophysical surveys. They've been up to Fooler off Shetland, so whether they cope with the Sulby Cossacks or not, I don't know. But they've come to help us and to teach.
And any good finds yet?
We've got shadows. They need interpreting. We're only 1 day into it yet. We're only 1 day into this site here yet. Couple more days, and we'll work our way around.
Unlike Time Team, you don't have just 3 days. You've got as long as you need within reason, I suppose.
Yes, and I think for Time Team, maybe they do some a bit in advance.
I think they know what they're doing. Don't they? If people want to get more information or join you, how do they do it?
Keeills.im, www.keeills, Keills.im is the website. There's a form there to register your interest. I mean, we're trying to build this up. We're focusing on Keeills because they're at risk. Yeah. Most of the Keeills that are still standing are either protected or at least respected, but the landscape around isn't, and we may be unwittingly disturbing or damaging or destroying archaeology. So at the moment we're trying to learn a bit more about what's there, and we can value it. But also the techniques that we're learning can be used for all sorts of other archaeological sites, so we can investigate in real life.